Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Becky if you're new, and if you missed it yesterday, we did a ton of canning. We canned a ton of chicken broth, cowboy candy. I still have a lot of my canning equipment out, so we are going to make some grape jelly today. I've never made grape jelly before. And then we're gonna go downstairs. If you missed it, last week we harvested the majority of the things out of the garden. There's still some stuff out there, but we basically put the garden to bed last week. This week, I'm finishing up some big canning projects, and I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna go downstairs, this week I'm focusing on finishing cleaning up downstairs, getting that harvest that's down there kind of put away so that we can enjoy it all fall and winter. So yesterday, we took care of a ton of the onions, but there's still a lot more onions that need to be taken care of. And I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna put them up so we can eat them fresh into winter. Now, I did check on the freeze dryer. I have a ton of onions in the freeze dryer. They are not done yet, so we are not gonna worry about those right now. What I'm going to start with is I'm gonna get my stove on, and I am going to measure out our grape juice. Now, the recipe that I'm gonna be following, this is a low sugar pectin recipe. It still has a lot of sugar in it, but comparatively, this is a low sugar pectin. I can link this down below for you, but you should be able to get it at your local grocery store. The grape juice recipe calls for actually using grapes and turning those grapes into juice. I'm gonna skip that step, and I'm just gonna use this store-bought grape juice that I purchased. It says it's 100% organic Concord grapes, and we're gonna use this. I've never made a jelly before, and from what I understand, jelly is made with juice, jam is made with the whole fruit. And I think this is actually gonna be easier than making jam because I don't have to wash the fruit or chop the fruit or anything. All we need to do is measure out our juice, and we need 5.5 cups. That's 2, 4. I'm glad I bought 2 of these bottles. 5.5. This smells like my childhood. I love grape juice. I never buy juice. Oh, that's good. I was just telling Josh when my parents were over and we were doing all that garden put to bed work that it would be super fun to grow Concord grapes to make our own grape juice. And he was on board with that, which I was pretty excited about. I did tell him though, I need him to take on that project of figuring out how we should plant them and where we should plant them and things like that. So I'm following the recipe that comes with the box pectin. I bought this last year when they still printed it off and put it in the box. Now, if you buy this pectin, you actually have to scan a QR code, and the recipe is online. So I'm gonna keep this just because it's nice to have. And we need to measure out our sugar for this, which is 3.5 cups. And you can't reduce the sugar because that is what helps it set. So there's our 3.5 cups. What I'm gonna do now is measure out about 1/4 cup. I'm gonna take my package of pectin, I'm gonna put that into my 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm gonna mix this together, and we're gonna get this into our juice. And then we need this to come up to a boil. Stir this together. Oh, it smells so good. This juice is not as sweet as the grape juice I remember growing up, so I'm excited that this is kind of a more tart juice going into the jam making process because it won't be overly sweet by the time the jelly. I usually say jelly when I'm making jam, but now that I'm making jelly, I'm saying jam, the jelly. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna use my electric canner for this because it has a self-timer on it. So once we have this processing, I can just set it and forget it. We can go downstairs and start working on some of the projects we need to work on downstairs. So I'm going to go ahead and put pretty warm water in this. I'm gonna recycle this, and I'm gonna pop this in the fridge. We actually might be able to hear the whole time this is processing, because what I need to do is wash all of these jars before I can bring them downstairs. So I have some boxes here to make it easier. Anytime you can, The next day, after they've sat for 24 hours, it's best practice to wash the jars, and I'll show you why in just a second. If you are new to canning, I'm gonna get my water in my stovetop canner. I've only ever water bath canned in this one time, and I can see that that is at a rolling boil. So what I'm gonna do, this is so much easier than doing jam. So I'm gonna put my sugar in there, and I'm gonna have this come back up to a rolling boil for 1 minute where I can't stir the boil away. I'm using a big pot here because if this boils up, I don't want it to boil over onto my stove. And this is the first time I'm ever making grape jelly. So I don't know if my family even really likes grape jelly. I haven't even asked Josh about this. This was a project I just took on my own. I know he loves strawberry jam. That's my favorite too. So that's why I always make a lot of strawberry jam. We made raspberry freezer jam together this year, and that has become one of my new favorites. That is incredible. Didn't set up really hard, so it's kind of saucy-like, but it's delicious. So I'm gonna can my jelly once it comes to a boil and it's ready to be jarred up in 1/2 pints. I washed these in the dishwasher yesterday. I just laid them on this towel open side down, and I'm gonna use these jars. That's one reason why I kind of wanted to tackle this project today, because I already had these jars washed and ready to go. So while this is coming back up to a boil, because it's gonna take a couple of minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and remove all the rings from these jars. So I don't know if you can see that, but that is chicken broth on these jars. So I would never want to just stick this on my pantry shelf because it has broth on the outside of it. That's just the nature of what happens when you can. So it's best to remove the rings. I always wash my rings before I use them again. And my dishwasher is currently running, so I'm just gonna put these rings in my sink. I'm gonna let this boil a little bit harder, and then I'm gonna set the timer for 1 minute. You can add a pat of butter at this point if you want to reduce the foam, but I don't think that's gonna bother me, so I'm not gonna worry about that. All right, I think this is good, so I'm gonna set a timer for 1 minute, and I'm gonna let this boil hard for 1 minute. You want it so that when you stir, you can't stir away the bubbles, which we are definitely at that point right now. I'm gonna go wash my hands while this is boiling and lay out some jars. So tonight for dinner, I wanna make chicken pot pie because I have some pre-cooked chicken from making the broth. And last week I did a great job menu planning, meal prepping, and this week I've done none of that. So today's Tuesday. We had leftovers yesterday for dinner and I was grateful to have them. But now at this point, if I don't cook something for dinner tonight, we won't have anything for dinner tonight. So my plan is to make chicken pot pie with biscuits where we fresh mill the wheat, but time will tell if we end up getting to that. So it's supposed to make 7 cups. So that is 7 cups right there. To test if your jelly is set, what you can do this for jam too, is put a little bit on a plate, pop this in the freezer for a minute and see if it sets. It's been about 30 seconds and it is set. So I'm gonna turn this off. I like canning jelly in 1/2 pints or jam in 1/2 pints because I give it away as gifts a lot. And I make different kinds, and so it's nice to have options and not be stuck with the whole pint when you open a jar sometimes. That exactly fit 7 1/2 pints, which that's what the recipe said it would. I'm gonna wipe these rims, get a new lid and ring on. So this recipe says we need to process jelly for 5 minutes. So I am going to set this on boil water can. So you can, in this countertop electric canner, you can pressure can or you can water bath can. So we're gonna water bath can, and I usually do 5 more minutes than a recipe calls for. So I'm gonna do 10 minutes. Push start, insert jars. This water is hot. My sink, underneath my sink has a hot water tank, so I can put really hot water into things, which is great because this jelly is hot. I'm gonna get these jars in here. I'm gonna set the lid on it, and then I can kind of forget about it, I think. It says insert jar, and then I'm probably supposed to push the next button. I can link this down below for you if you are interested in it. I love it. Yesterday, I had my big stovetop canner out, which I have to babysit and make sure that it's at the right setting for pressure canning these broths. But then after that, I did the next 2 rounds of broth in this so that I didn't have to pay attention to it as much, because it beeps at you and tells you what you need to do next. So I'm gonna push. So I inserted the jars, so now it's gonna warm this water up, and it'll beep at me if I need to do anything else. I'm gonna set the lid on it. I'm not gonna lock it or anything because we're not pressure canning, we're water bath canning. And now I'm gonna come back to these jars and I'm gonna get them all washed up. This is not my favorite part of canning, but it is worth it because it is so convenient having this homemade broth on the shelf. So I haven't labeled these either. I need to label them with what they are and the date. And this is how I wash my jars. I grab a couple towels, I get them wet. I put soap on them. This is just some dish soap. And then I scrub around the rings. That's really important because you want to make sure anything that settled on those gets wiped off. I wipe the outside of them, the bottom of them, the top of them, and then I usually get a whole pile in my sink, and then I rinse a bunch of them off at once. So I can kind of get an assembly line going. Something like the jelly is not going to make as big of a mess around the jars as something like broth. So I will wash those, but typically you don't have as much siphoning, at least I don't, when it comes to jams and jellies. We do get to making dinner together. So we get a bunch of projects done upstairs, we go downstairs, we get a bunch of projects done, and then we come back upstairs, we do projects, and we make dinner. And we make a chicken pot pie using 100% whole wheat, freshly milled flour for the biscuit topping. Josh likes his pot pie with biscuits on the top. And it's been really fun learning how to incorporate whole, freshly milled flour into my baking. Some things I'm kind of slowly starting to incorporate, adding 1 or 2 cups of flour and then the rest of it being all-purpose, white flour. But today we do 100% whole, freshly milled wheat, and we make biscuits using no store-bought white flour. And so that's kind of fun. It's been really fun learning how to cook with freshly milled grains. I am no expert, but we are on this journey together, and I do want to continue to add more of these fresh milled grains into my cooking. That did not take very long to get these all washed. I'm just gonna dry them just a little bit. And I think before I label them, I'm gonna move on to something else. I'm gonna let these air dry for a little bit, and then we'll come back to bringing these downstairs. So I've got a big project to tackle downstairs, and instead of trying to tackle the whole project at once, I'm tackling little pieces of it at a time. So we started it yesterday, and we're gonna do another big chunk of it today. Part of that will be bringing these downstairs and putting them where they go. But I'm just gonna let those air dry. And I am gonna grab a pair of scissors because we're gonna need this for our project. And I might even grab a pair of gloves. I would grab garden gloves. Normally I keep my garden gloves in this drawer. I wash my garden gloves every time I use them, usually. And so they go in here clean so I can grab them and head outside. But Doesn't look like I have a pair in there right now. So I'm just gonna grab these and we're gonna head downstairs. Now this did beep at me. I pushed this play button and it went to the next step. Now it's heating, and then once it gets to a boil, it's gonna start counting down for the amount of time it needs to process. So let's see, I'm gonna grab my broom because I know that I have a disaster down there to work on, and we're just gonna start this bit by bit, taking care of this disaster. So here's what we're working with. And the disaster that I'm referring to is basically this right here. The one thing that I want to tackle today, because this is going to take me multiple days, is I want to take care of the onions. So in here we have 2 big bags of black beans. These are the bush bean varieties. We have what are going to be pinto beans. These are scarlet runner beans, black beans, that is the pole bean variety, more pinto beans, more scarlet runner beans, more onions, our wheat, which has more scarlet runner beans, and pumpkins and zucchini. These zucchinis have a very hard shell on them, almost as hard as a pumpkin. So I am keeping these down here where it's cool, and I am gonna be doling these out to the chickens as they need some fresh, yummy snacks. But this is not how I intend to keep this basement. This is just how it's looking like now, and I just need to tackle it as I have time. Now this variety of onion here is a storage onion variety. The Walla Walla onions I processed yesterday. These are firm and beautiful, and these are gonna last hopefully months and months down here without me needing to do anything with them. They have been drying down here for quite some time. And what I'm gonna do, last year I hung them up. I don't think I'm gonna go through that effort this time. I think I'm just going to cut the roots off, cut the tops off, and I'll find something to put them in. I don't know what I'm gonna put them in yet. But I'm just gonna set them over here. I'm gonna make a big mess on the floor, and I will clean it all up when I'm done. I set a timer on my phone so that when it goes off, I'm just gonna run upstairs and just check on the jam that is in the canner on the counter. Just because I'm not used to water bath canning in it, and so I just want to keep a little bit closer eye on it until I get comfortable with that process. I just ran upstairs and grabbed my harvest baskets, and I think I'm going to store my onions in these because I am no longer harvesting really anything out of the garden where I need my harvest baskets. And I think I have 4 of these. So the way that I'm preserving onions this year is by keeping them fresh like this. Earlier in this season, I pickled a ton of red onions, and we've gone through about half of those. I have freeze-dried a ton. They're actually still in the freeze dryer. And I'm excited to see how those work as using in onion powder, but also reconstituting in diced onions. I've also just diced a bunch of them and froze them. So we have a ton of onions. I didn't weigh them. I'm not good about weighing my harvest. Last year I grew 74 pounds of carrots, which was kind of fun to know how many I grew. And maybe next year that'll be a goal of mine. This year the goal was to be a better labeler, so I knew what varieties things were, and I was much better at that, so I indeed know what type of onion this is. We started these onions from seed together, and I'm excited to see how far this will get us into the fall and winter without having to purchase any onions. I don't want to layer too many onions on top of each other, because what I want is when I come down here, that one I think I'm actually going to bring upstairs. I'm going to start a pile of things that I'm going to bring upstairs because it looked like it was starting to grow some green on it. So I want to use that right away. But I don't want to pile it too high because when I come down here, I want to be able to do a quick ocular pat down on the onions and grab the ones that need to be used up first. So if I stack too many on top of each other, it'll be hard to kind of assess each and every onion when I come down here. think I might be able to get all of these in one basket. At least I'm going to start with that, and then after I clean them up, I can put them into 2 different baskets. All right, this is the last one of this variety. So pretty decent. So you're sitting on a table with all the tomatoes that I processed this year. Oh, I forgot one. And that's because I had help bringing those down. And I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to put them on the shelf yet. So I just asked that they get put there. And then at some point, maybe today, I will put them on the shelf. But for now, my onions, this variety of onion is taken care of. I have my garlic and potatoes over there. You all have taught me you do not want to store your onions and potatoes close to each other. So I think I'm just going to take these onions and plop them over here by my wine, and they're basically on the opposite ends of the basement. I don't know how far apart they should be, but that's about as far apart as I can get them, with them still being down here. This is now the red variety of onions. This is a storage variety. This is called, Red Wing. We started this from seed together as well. I'm pretty sure we started all the onions we grew together from seed. And this is by far the best onion crop I've ever grown, especially starting from seed myself. Look how big that red onion is. It's absolutely stunning. And like I said, this is not all the onions that I have grown. This is just the onions that I'm gonna keep fresh to use throughout the winter, because probably 15 pounds of red onions we grew together have been turned into pickled onions. And this is the first year I am not purchasing any onions to supplement my own harvest from a local farmer. I know exactly how many onions I started, and I'm curious to see how long this will last me. And so I will know to adjust how much to grow for next year if this doesn't get me through a year, because I could dedicate more space to onions if I need to or want to. And next year I might only grow storage varieties of onions and not Walla Wallas, just because the Walla Wallas don't last very long. But if I love the freeze-dried onions, then maybe I will grow them again, because they definitely grow the largest onion. So I could grow them knowing that I plan to turn them into freeze-dried onions, or even diced onions for the freezer, because I do love having diced onions for the freezer because it's so convenient. Some of these I'm gonna just bring upstairs and know that they need to be used right away. I don't know if you can see that big bowl that's right there. That's the wheat. It's a 30-quart bowl of wheat that at some point here I'm gonna tackle. That's one of the things that needs to be tackled down here. I think I got all these red onions cleaned up. There's probably, oh, see, here's 2 right here that I didn't get cleaned up yet. And I've got one more basket that I can use, but it's full of something right now, so I need to empty it. And I need to find something to empty it into. I have one box here I just found. These are my scarlet runner beans, which I'm not quite ready to process today. So I don't really want them on the floor mixing up with all the other beans. They're pretty easy to tell what they are, but still. So we're not going for perfection down here, we're just going for progress. So here are our 2 baskets of red onions. I'm just gonna pop these over here. Let's see, maybe here. I'll keep those onions there for now. I probably will move them, but for now they're good there. So now it's been 24 hours since I put this wheat in the freezer. I had a situation where I bought some bulk brown rice from, I think, Costco, and this could happen from anywhere you buy bulk grains from. There were bugs in it, and it was horrible. And I had to throw everything away in my pantry because I didn't want to mess around with that. So now my practice is, you don't have to do this, but I do this. Anytime I buy any bulk grain, rice, flour, I don't do sugar, just rice, flour, oats, beans, things like that. I put it in the freezer for 24 hours. Now I'm gonna set it on this freezer for at least 24 hours, and then I can put it into my buckets. Just kill off anything that's in there. It just makes me feel better, so that's why I do it. So now I wanna do some cleanup. So we got the onions actually taken care of. So I have 3 baskets of onions. I think my scale is down here. I could weigh it. It's not a good representation of all the onions I grew because, one, we've been eating onions. I haven't had to buy onions in probably 3 months. And a bunch of them are in the freeze dryer, a bunch of them are in the refrigerator pickled, and some are in the freezer. I thought I had a scale down here, but I don't, so I'm not worried about that. I just know I have 3 baskets. You and I will see how long that lasts me. So let's go ahead and clean up this mess. So we've got all of the onion peels and tops. But what I need to find is something to sweep them up into. Let's see. Maybe I will just open the door to outside and I'll just go put these onion tops out in the woods. All right, I'll be back for more. These are the onions that I'm going to use first. So that was one nice thing about going through them is I know that these need to be used up. And I want to show you how this is looking down here. It is nowhere near perfect, but we are starting to see parts of the floor again, which is good. So we're just going to tackle this a little bit at a time. I'm not going to tackle these yet because I want to do other projects. And I know that these black beans and scarlet runner beans are going to be a big project. So I'm going to tackle those on a different day. Normally I'm someone that likes to jump in and do the whole thing, big project. But for some reason this basement this year, I'm just going to do little pieces at a time and then it'll all be done. It'll all add up to be one big project. So this is all the tomato products I did this year. Those are all the tomato products from last year. That's why I didn't do any crushed tomatoes. The only tomatoes I did this year were marinara sauce, diced tomatoes, and then I gifted a whole lot of tomatoes away because I have enough. So let's go upstairs. I want to strain the elderberry oxymel and the turmeric ginger one because they've been sitting for quite some time now and they can be drained out. And I want to get those drained out so we can start using them. We had a little cold go through our family and I want to be able to use those. And then we're gonna get going on dinner tonight. So this is the oxymel and both oxymels. They're both oxymels, just two different kinds that I want to strain out. And I walked up here and I had forgotten about this project. These need to be brought downstairs. So I'm gonna go ahead and write on them 24. Is it 24? I'm gonna get these brought back downstairs and I think I'm gonna wait to strain those oxymels out till tomorrow. Every single one of these lids sealed, which is always good. It is nice if you keep some of these boxes. Most of my jars are from thrift stores, so I don't have a ton of boxes, but when I do have boxes, I like to keep them when I can because it makes for schlepping jars around that much easier. I think I can carry 2 boxes down at a time. And then I have 4 jars of broth that are in my refrigerator that I'm just gonna use. I didn't feel like running my canner one more time. And I figured I would just plan meals around those jars of broth. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just get these straining so that they can strain while we make dinner. Because if I remember correctly, these took a while to strain. This is a ginger turmeric oxymel. It has ginger, turmeric, black peppercorns, and I think some Ceylon cinnamon sticks. This is an elderberry one, and an oxymel is just basically like a tincture, but instead of using vodka to extract the good properties, you use honey, raw honey, and raw apple cider vinegar. Oh my goodness. They both smell incredible. I'm only gonna be able to do one of these at a time because I only have one strainer. So what I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna do, it doesn't really matter, the ginger turmeric one first. Well, that didn't take very long. That went through that, no problem. But I'm gonna let that sit there for a minute. I'm gonna taste this. Oh, that's so good. I will link this recipe, but basically I just took fresh turmeric, ginger, blended that in the food processor, Ceylon cinnamon, black pepper, and then I covered it with honey, apple cider vinegar, let it sit for about 6 weeks, and then it's good to go. And I'm gonna throw this in my compost. I'm not gonna give this to my chickens because they are not supposed to have, they could probably have this one, I haven't looked it up, but they can't have the elderberry one. I'm okay if a little bit of the ginger and turmeric ends up in the elderberry one. I did this a little bit different than I did the first elderberry oxymel I made. So I'm gonna give this a try. The ginger and turmeric were fresh when I made this, and so they didn't absorb much of the liquid, versus the elderberry one absorbed a bunch of the liquid because they were dry elderberries. Ooh, that's good. That's a little bit spicier this time, and that is because I used a lot more ginger this time than I did last time. Let's see if I can, if I set that there, will that make a big mess? No. I have one more here that I'm gonna strain through. And while that's straining, I'm gonna get going on dinner. That's gonna take a few minutes. I don't wanna dump that because I wanna try to get as much goodness out of this as I can. I'm actually gonna be gifting some of these to my sister and my aunt for Christmas gifts. The only veggie prep I need to do for tonight's dinner is some carrots for our chicken pot pie with a biscuit topping. That's probably more carrots than I need, but I'm gonna start with that. I'm gonna peel these, wash them, and then dice them. I'm gonna use the carrots that look like they need to be used up first. I'm gonna get going on the onions. Whoop. I'm gonna put butter in here, along with some onions that I had already chopped in my fridge from some other cooking projects. I'm gonna get these sauteing with a little bit of salt while I finish up those carrots. I think a couple of these, I'm gonna go ahead and just quarter and put into the fridge for snacks raw, because a few of us in my family enjoy that, and so it'd be nice just to have a couple in the fridge to be munched on. So those are gonna be for snacks, and this is gonna be for dinner. I'm glad I let this drip here because we got a good, probably half a cup out of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and compost that. I'm gonna pour this into this. This was a clean half-gallon mason jar. Ooh, I'm spilling a little bit. And then I will start straining this other jar here. If you're wondering what these buckets are here for, those were cleaned yesterday, and as soon as my wheat berries that I took out of the freezer are ready to go into a bucket, that's the bucket they're gonna go into. I think that just got a little sticky on there. I'm just gonna let this strain. My funnel is in the dishwasher. Or no, it's not, it's in the sink. My dishwasher is clean. Needs to be unloaded. All right, we got that project done. That was not on my list of projects to being done today, but that feels good to get that done. I wanna get this elderberry off the counter because I have a feeling that could stain my counters. I will pop both of these in the fridge, and then I'll jar them up and gift them at the holidays. Plus we'll enjoy them. When that's done straining, I'll put that in here. Now I wanna get going on the biscuit top for our dinner tonight, which means I need my grain mill, so I need to move this. Our jam is done at this point. Our jelly is done at this point. And it's beautiful. It's still liquidy in there, but this is basically, I mean, this is very hot. So I'm sure when it comes to jellies, I'm sure they have to cool off before they will firm up. At least that's what I would assume. If they don't firm up, then we have grape. Don't want to do that. If they don't firm up, then we basically have grape syrup, which won't go to waste either, but I'm hoping they firm up. I can tell you right now that the jelly set up beautifully. I am so excited that I finally made jelly for the first time. Let me tell you, making jelly using a jarred or a bottled juice is so incredibly easy compared to making jam. Now, if I had to make the juice myself first, then obviously that would be quite a few more steps. But using the bottled juice made making grape jelly one of the easiest canning projects I have ever done. And so I'm really glad I did it because I was talking to Josh later that night and I asked him, hey, do you even like grape jelly because I had never made it before. I've never bought it before because that's not something that I grew up with. My mom usually would buy strawberry jam or marionberry jam. And so grape jelly was just never in our house. But I've always wanted to try it because I've seen people make it and see how easy it is. And we love it. And Josh said it actually was his go-to jelly growing up when he would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I will just tell you, we both love it. So here I'm making the biscuits. I have started making the pot pie filling on the stove, and now I'm going to make the biscuits. And the wheat coming out of the mill is actually pretty warm, so I was able to work the butter in relatively easy. And then I pop that back in the fridge because I want the butter to cool back down. Now, you all taught me this. I did not know this, and I didn't know this when I was making this chicken pot pie and the biscuits on this day. But you never want to mill your flour next to a stove that is on because it could be flammable. And so I didn't know that until one of you informed me of that. So this is going to be the last time you will see me actually milling flour next to the stove with the stove on. So I appreciate that because now I know and I won't be doing that. So here's our chicken pot pie filling going into the oven. And here is our bread or our biscuit dough basically. And working with fresh milled flour is a completely different experience. I don't know the right term, but it's so different than working with all-purpose white flour. And it took me a very long time to get really proficient at making a beautiful fluffy biscuit every time making it with all-purpose flour. And I know that it is going to take me a while to get really proficient at making a really fluffy biscuit using whole wheat flour. These biscuits turned out really well. The flavor on them was fantastic, but I have a ways to go with the texture. So I just know that it's how I manipulated the flour and the butter. That is where I need to get more comfortable to get a really, really flaky biscuit. So I have my pot pie filling in the oven. I do know, because I make a lot of chicken pot pie with biscuits on the top, is that if you don't have that biscuit filling bubbling really, really well before you put the biscuits on, you're never going to get the biscuit fully cooked because the top of the biscuit will get too brown before the bottom of the biscuit can get brown. So now that my filling is really creamy and bubbly, I'm going to go ahead and top it with our biscuits, let them bake, and then we will serve it up. This turned out so well, but I definitely have room for improvement on making the most light and fluffy 100% whole wheat biscuit. And so, friend, we had a great day, a very, very productive day. We have a very productive day coming up tomorrow. I hope you join me for that. So if you're new, please consider subscribing. If you've been here before, I greatly appreciate the fact that you take time out of your day to spend time with me. If you want to watch more of my videos, I'll pop them here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.